Welcome back to the Sound for More channel and welcome back to another demonstration and tutorial. Today I have the pleasure to introduce you to MooMu from Studio 6+1. Before I continue, I would like to remind my viewers to subscribe as it helps with growing the channel. Additionally, if you would like to support what I do, please do check the instructions contained in each video description. Thank you again. So, MooMu. It's a modular synth, and so when you think about modular, you can think about Drumbo, you can think about MI rack, etc., etc. So you need to work a little bit to create actually your preset. Of course, they are all based on things like Eurorack, etc., etc., which you might be familiar with. And you have different modules which you can configure yourself. Instead of using hardware, you can use software modular or modules on your iPad. As you can see, we are inside AUM, just an audio channel, and we are just using MooMu as an AUv3 because it works standalone, but it also can work as an AUv3. Now, in terms of interface, you can see at the top we have a section where you can add your macros, which you can, of course, edit. On the left-hand side, we have a toolbar, which you can use almost like to get to additional functionality. Then in the middle, you have this area where you can add all your modules. And then on the right-hand side, you have additional modules that you can call upon to, for example, see the list of modules like so, the presets, rows, settings, and then you can go into patch management or the full screen of these fantastic XY pod, which is really good. And when you initialize it, you have this preset which sounds phenomenal. And here you can go up and down octave. You can change your scale to, for example, minor or Aeolian or different other ones. You can change the root, the number of poly count, etc., etc. Sounds really amazing. And of course, if you go here on preset, you can choose a lot of presets, which it comes available with. As well, here you can choose to create a new preset, load one, rename it. You can do a little bit of preset management, which is always useful. Now, let me give you a sense of what it means using modular with MooMu. So let's click on new to create a new project. As you can see, you have MIDI to CV here as an input, of course, because we are inside AUM, and let's make sure that we have connected my external MIDI controller. Yes, my Nano Key 2, that's perfectly fine. So you have a MIDI to CV because you need to convert MIDI messages to control voltage messages. Okay, here you can see the channel is coming in, and for example, the number of polyphony or your poly count. And then here you have the typical ability here to click, drag and drop and do connect cables between an input or an output, etc., etc. So let's go to a module here. And the first thing you need to do is to generate some sound. So let's search for a VCO and let's bring in a sine VCO. Click, drag and drop here between the MIDI to CV and your audio input and output, because you need one of those to produce sounds, right? Next, we need something like an envelope, an ID, and a DSR for attack, decay, sustain, and release. So there is this fantastic one called envelopes. So click, drag, and drop. Of course, it needs to be after the sine VCO. Okay, so that's the minimum you need to have really to generate some sound. So let's click on X here to close the modules view. Let's connect your voltage per octave here to the input inside here of the VCO. Then let's take the output and go inside the VCA, voltage controlled amplitude here. And let's connect the gate to get that MIDI signal to start the envelope. Let's take the output from the VCA and go inside the input of your audio in out. And now I can produce some sounds. Now, of course, I can change the decay, I can change the release as well. Of course, depending on what you want to do. Now, if I was to increase the number of poly count, if I start to hit now keys on my external MIDI controller, you can hear some misses in terms of sound. That is because it's not handling poly signals. In order to do that, let's go to module and let's search for a sum module, which allows you to sum all those poly signals or multi signals into one single signal, which we put here before the audio input and output, and then we make the respective connection. We take these output here into the input here of the sum module, and then the output from the sum module into the input of the audio in out. And now it becomes polyphonic, which is fantastic. That's what we want, right? Let's give it some feedback here. Great. You might say, okay, I want to have a little bit more release. And that's fine, you can do that. Now let's make it a little bit more interesting. Let's add a reverb. Let's search for verb. There it is. And then let's scroll here to the right, click drag and drop after sum, and we put a plate reverb. Click here on the X, and then let's make the necessary connection. I just need to redirect this output here from the envelope here to this input of the plate verb, and then the output from the plate verb to the input of the sum module. Of course, you might want to decrease the decay on the plate verb. Really, really great. Now, you might want to do a couple of other things as well. So, for example, you might want to control via velocity the amplitude. In order to do that, let's go to module, let's search for a VCA. Nice and simple, there it is, and let's add that after the envelope, like so. Now let's make the connection, like always, like so. Nice and simple, but then let's take the velocity here from MIDI to CV, and let's put these here. So, and then let's change just the settings so that we can hear the difference. And of course, you could, for example, add the internal AUM keyboard. And now, depending, of course, where you click on the keyboard, you get a different sensitiveness, right? Different velocity. And of course, you might want to adjust the setting here. For example, you might just say the velocity range is up to 127. Of course, might want to remove the attack. Be careful here, it might start to pick. But you can start to hear that it gets louder, so you can control that VCA over there, and so on and so forth. So, for example, you could say, well, I want to have a filter, and I want to be able to control that filter in terms of the frequency, the cutoff here, via the pressure. So you can do that like so, and then make the necessary adjustment, right? And so on and so forth. And then, of course, if you want to have that nice pad, which I showed you at the beginning, well, simple, go to module, search for pad, like so. And you have this keys pad, click, drag and drop here, close these. Let's scroll down, let's change the connection. So we are going to move V-oct to here, then the gate here, then the velocity here as well, and the same on the pressure, right? And now you can click up here to expand that view, and you can play with it. Now let's go drop by a couple of octaves. Of course, you don't hear now sustain because that is how it's being configured. So let's go to the patch here and let's go to the ADSR. Let's give it some sustain and let's play again. And so on and so forth. So it works really well, and you can produce some really interesting preset. So it's really nice, really some great sound you can get from MooMu. So this was just an introductory video. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, see you next time. Bye.